The president making a lot of headlines with that. And look, we'll get to the Prime Minister of Canada and those headlines in just a second. But I want to just go to what he just said about the shutdown in Washington. And of course, he talked about the politics of it. But government is in his hands now. I mean, that's basically what Democrats have done by forcing this shutdown. And he told us exactly what he plans to do. And with Trump, you should always listen. So he says, I will cut billions of dollars in waste and abuse. He has Russell Vought looking at doing this, the person he's put in charge to do this. He's ready to begin cutting the government. When asked about cutting, time for that. When would it happen? He said, quote, in 4 or 5 days, I'll tell you which jobs I'll cut, which jobs he's not going to see coming back likely. I mean, these are big points, and they are not talking points. He is carving this out with specificity. I don't know if the Democrats are listening or not. John Roberts, when you watch that, there are Americans watching this and wondering, they want to talk with their Democratic representatives, especially after that conversation.
Well, I think this is a lot of the pressure that the president is putting on Democrats to try to come to the table, to say, if you do not come to the table, if you don't open the government, there's going to be pain, and the pain will be laid at your feet. There will come a time in the not too distant future, and as you pointed out, he laid out a timeline of a few days when they have to start paring back jobs. It's not going to be furloughs. It's going to be layoffs. He wants to a large degree, as he pointed out earlier this year, remake government, and that could cost a lot of jobs. And he's going to say, Democrats, it's your fault that this is happening, because you won't open the government with this CR that we're putting forward, which basically continues the spending levels as they were.
You know, Kayleigh, he also said in the mix of what John's talking about, all of this to get to a more balanced government. Who would argue against that?
Democrats.
Democrats.
Democrats who were very upset with DOGE. They were very upset with the cuts that took place there, the idea of balancing the budget, slimming down the government. They were anti that. But they have just laid a platter in front of the president and said, DOGE 2.0, have at it with this government shutdown. It's confounding. And Senator Tom Cotton said earlier that he thinks his colleague Chuck Schumer is holding out until this big rally in D.C. on October 18th to spice up this left-wing protest, and will only negotiate then. Well, how does that work, as you point out, with this 4 to 5 day timeline for these layoffs? They are laid at Chuck Schumer's feet. And just a reminder that Chuck Schumer, he passed 13 continuing resolutions during his tenure. He has a clean continuing resolution. All Democrats have to do is vote on it. But instead, it is about catering to the left-wing base. That is the sole purpose for this. There's polls going back to January showing AOC 10 points ahead of Chuck Schumer in a primary. She's one of the most favorable Democrats in the entire party. Chuck Schumer's underwater. She's above water. And he is staring down a potential primary challenge in the end of his career. And he's been in that spot since Mike Johnson was in 3rd grade. One shout out to you, Harris. You predicted this would end at 12:40. And you were right on the money.
She got the over and under on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
One quick point just to roll off of Kayleigh. If Chuck Schumer is waiting until the 18th before he makes a move here, so much for the Democrats' contention that they need to put the enhanced Obamacare tax credits in this CR because they're running up against the November the 1st deadline. You know, the president is saying, open the government now. Let's negotiate on this. But he wants to wait until the middle of the month.
So that's an excellent point. The other thing I picked up, October 15th, 3 days earlier, that's when the paychecks stop. And Chuck Schumer reportedly might want to have a rally on the 18th and stretch this out. This, Leslie, I have to come to you. This is now so well, and look, stop. This is now so much now, because of what was just said in the Oval Office, ignoring the American people on your side of the aisle. How do you square that?
Harris, every poll that I have seen shows that the American people, not just now, but always historically blame the party in power. Republicans have the majority in the House. Republicans have the majority in the Senate. Republicans have the Oval Office. This is on them. They have the power to open the government. They have the power to shut down the government. With respect, Kayleigh, to Chuck Schumer, when you said he's been staring this down since Mike Johnson was in grade school, well, he keeps getting reelected since Mike Johnson was.
Not if AOC primaries him.
Nope,
if AOC primaries him, he's gone.
Change always comes. We just happen to know the date.
And you know what? That might be a good thing. That might be a good thing, because one thing that I definitely have said about my party is that we not only need changes in leadership, But everybody on the right talks about age and is concerned about age. Well, AOC is younger.
Do you want a socialist takeover?
No, I don't want a socialist takeover. I want the people to decide who they want to represent them in their state. I don't live in New York. I'm here right now. I'm in California. But I want the people of the state to decide who they want as their representation.
Which means a socialist would take over.
What about the country?
Well, if somebody wants that, look at Bernie Sanders has done very well, not just for Democrats, but for the state of Vermont.
That the Republicans have all the levers of government. It's interesting that you say that, though. We've never seen a president like President Trump who's about to use the power the Democrats have just handed him to try to balance the government and do the things that others haven't done. He'll get credit for that.
Well, and respectfully, I think that's part of the ignorance and incompetence that has infested the liberal speak and the talking points that are spewed all over social media. And it's not about the majority. It's about the 60 votes needed. Tim Walz himself was lambasting Trump about it, and the ignorance cannot be overstated. And let's take a lesson in civics. So it's not just about saying he's in charge, because clearly that's actually not what is the point right now. And I think when you talk about age, the fixation was not on age, it's on competence. For once, competence, an actual representation of constituents, not followers, but constituents. And that is something that the Democrats have absolutely abdicated and are derelict in. As a former federal attorney, believe me, all of these furloughs, even getting remotely close, the amount of money that is wasted on the anticipation, the preparation, then the execution.
So true.
I cannot overstate that either. So the amount that we're losing in the trillions as every day goes by, with the loss of functionality, the loss of GDP, but also in the wasted effort. And we're supposed to just think that the gimmicks are acceptable from Schumer. I mean, look, there's a buffet of socialism, frankly, at every election. But at the end of the day, these people are not serving their constituents, and they should be primaried out. David Hogg was right a long time ago. I know it was an uproar to the establishment, right? But at the end of the day, there is a disconnect, and every American should see that. The Hill is failing us right now.
John?
I was just going to say that, you said socialism has worked quite well in Vermont under Bernie Sanders.
Well, there's a difference between a democratic socialism
but
and
there's
communism.
Also a huge difference
hear that message.
There's also a huge difference between Vermont and New York City. Vermont is a lovely place. I love going there, but it's not New York City.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Exactly, which is why the constituency of the state of New York, and not just the state, within the city of I mean, New York City is wonderful, and it's, huge, and the largest population of cities in the United States, but it's not the whole state of New York.
And it's going to be run into the ground if Mamdani wins.
There are red areas.
This city will be run into the ground if Mamdani wins.
We will see
what contrast that will be. Trump's America versus socialist New York City.
We will see what happens. Again, what he is doing is he's listening to the people. He gets on the street,
to the
talks
Democratic
to the people
primary
just like
voters.
AOC.
It's interesting because we were talking about the shutdown, and you went there, and I was really trying to listen attentively to figure out how you squared what you were talking about. We're talking about Chuck Schumer choosing his career over the country.
No, Chuck Schumer is not choosing his career over the country.
Then what is he doing?
Well, the majority of the people, you can't just disregard. You talk about listen to the people.
You think
I'm a Democrat. They are listening to the people.
And I'm going to quote the president again. I'll tell you, some of those jobs, a lot of those jobs are not coming back.
Show me one poll where the American people, Democrat or Republican, are blaming Chuck Schumer for this. They're not. They're blaming the Republican Party.
Let's take a poll 15 minutes after that Oval Office news conference.
Sure, let's.
Okay.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.